Big Brother speaking in English, of course, with an American accent. Or have you ever been sympathetic to the old communist experience in Eastern Europe? Yanis Varoufakis: No, never. Big Brother. And what about Russia today? Yanis Varoufakis: It's a sinister and good-for-nothing place. What are Europeans allowed to think today? What are the parameters of current European thought? What magic words aid careerism and media exposure in Europe? And what thoughts in the European landscape are simply verboten? The razor-sharp mind of the former Greek finance minister and the founder of the Democracy in Europe movement 2025 DM25. Yanis Varoufakis is a good indicator of contemporary European thinking and its corrupt shallowness. Varoufakis declares himself to be a Europeanist. Indeed, going by his latest book Adults in the Room, that's all he thinks about Europe. Or to be more precise, the European Union and how to prevent it from falling apart. Democracy, pluralism and unwavering Europeanism is his solution to the EU's problems. That and anti-communism. When face-to-face with the EU's most hawkish decision-maker, German finance minister, Wolfgang Schäuble, this is how Varoufakis defines and defends himself and the radical left in Greece. Are you comparing me with a well-meaning DDR East German communist minister? I asked. Let me reassure you, Wolfgang. I am a committed Democrat, a determined pluralist and an unwavering Europeanist. And so are my series of party colleagues. We have nothing in common with East German communism. Varoufakis believed that his own credibility and that of his radical left party in 2015 hinged upon this clear disavowal of communism. But Varoufakis doesn't stop there. He's desperate to be a good European. In his account of his time in the Eurozone crisis, he places other markers around the edges of his thought. Markers which are meant to support his Europeanness, and indeed his morality. And what do these markers look like? They're almost invisible in the context of 500 dense pages, but they're strategic pointers that prove Varoufakis is a real Europeanist. On page 2, Varoufakis quickly frames his understanding of Europe today. Vladimir Putin must be rubbing his eyes in disbelief at the way the West has been undermining itself so fabulously. For this truly European author, it's a given that Putin is enjoying the fall of the West. A few lines later, our European hero Varoufakis says there are no goodies or baddies in this book. But in the background, of course, there is one bad regime he can't tolerate. On page 347, he calmly states Putin and his regime had an appalling human rights record. Did we, whose only real backers were the progressives of Europe, want to be associated with such a state? So who then do we good Europeans want to associate with? Varoufakis doesn't explicitly answer this question because the answer is obvious. America, the butcher of Arabia and the godfather of zombie capitalism, the humanitarian USA, is apparently progressive Europe's only option. Varoufakis has no compunction when linking up with the American deep state. In his struggle to be a good European, he openly embraces Lawrence Larry Summers, Jeffrey Sachs, Bernie Sanders and Barack Obama. In his struggle, his Mein Kampf to be a good European, Varoufakis is clear he didn't want to antagonize America. And so he persuaded Syriza to jettison its genuinely radical 2012 plans. Plans that included, for example, the closure of all foreign bases in Greece and withdrawal from NATO. In a 2013 speech, written by Varoufakis, Syriza directly informed the Brookings Institution that U.S. foreign policy was now not a problem. In other words, the humanitarian crisis in the Middle East caused by the U.S. was not an issue for the good European. And this brings us to the big blank space in Varoufakis' understanding of Europe today: imperialism. Joseph McCarthy would have been proud. Because while emphasizing his anti-communism and his Russophobia, this good European, Varoufakis, completely misses the horror which Europe and its partner master the USA are responsible for. NATO's wars of aggression, which are contemporaneous with the Eurozone crisis, and which may explain a large part of that crisis, are absent from Varoufakis' account of European reality. But what does Varoufakis know? After all, he's only an economist. Reality is something the academic economist rarely addresses. Another in vogue left-wing European economist unconsciously explains the problem well. In his best-selling book Capital, the Frenchman Thomas Piketty declares in his introduction, I belong to a generation that turned 18 in 1989. I belong to a generation that came of age listening to news of the collapse of the communist dictatorship and never felt the slightest affection or nostalgia for those regimes or for the Soviet Union. I was vaccinated for life against the conventional but lazy rhetoric of anti-capitalism. Varoufakis is a bit older than Piketty, but he too was obviously vaccinated for life against anti-capitalism. This vaccination, however, wasn't just against anti-capitalism, it was also against anti-imperialism. As a result, Piketty too doesn't mention imperialism once in his book on Capital. Such is the emptiness of the progressive European mind today that reality passes it and it sees nothing. And Europe is paying the price. Cut off from its fellow Europeans, its working class and the Russians, and cut off from its neighbors, the Asians and Africans, progressive Europe is an embarrassing lonely fool. Only by engaging and adopting the verboten concepts, anti-capitalism and anti-imperialism, does it have a hope. But that demands independence from its American big brother. And it also demands, probably for the first time in the history of Europe, adulthood.